Hello all, and we are on the screen with whatever I put on my second monitor. And right now, that would be Geek Scorpio, Jesse's Girl, myself, and YieldMan. And we've got topics curated by Jesse's Girl. And we're going to start with one that almost creates controversy, at least with one franchise.
Yes.
I think we know where we're going to go with that. We're looking at our favorite horror game elements. Now, I want to very quickly go over something before we really get too far into it. And I'm pulling up my notes right now. And there is a very important distinction between horror-themed and a horror game. And I feel we're probably going to cover that a little bit here because the theme does not make a survival horror game, as Resident Evil has very clearly shown us with particularly 6.
Yeah. 6 indeed.
Are we vowing right now that we're not gonna talk about the evil within, or how's that gonna go?
Mean, if we wanted to talk about the second one, that'd be fine.
I haven't played it yet, but I do own it. Maybe we can hit up this topic again sometime, and we can have a discussion. But I just remember me and you have had a couple of instances of being like, we can't go down this road.
Yeah. It's definitely worth playing, and at least the sequel is, which kind of sucks because it didn't perform very well at all because of the stigma of the first one. And that's
which is weird. I saw a lot of people that love the first one, and I was like, did we play the game? Anyway, back on topic.
Yeah, so I'm gonna first off just say that enemy design for me is a very, very important part of any horror game, whether it be horror themed or survival horror. You want the enemies to be memorable, but you also don't want them to be like the Albinoid from Code Veronica, which is literally just a human ass for a head on a salamander.
For a second, I was like, wait, what was that one? And then you described it. I was like, oh.
And you immediately knew, because it's
Got
a
it.
description.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's important to distinguish between horror-themed and horror, and an actual horror game, because horror-themed is essentially things with horror elements, but by that definition, Doom is a horror game, and anyone who's played, especially the modern Doom, no, that's a run-and-gun action game.
Yeah.
Well, and then you've also got, like, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which had things where I was like, if this was in Resident Evil, I'd be terrified. Like, there were certain moments of that where I was like, this is straight Resident Evil. But I agree with you, Brandon. I actually think that, I think monster design is really important, and especially, like, you can tell, I don't know, in, like, Silent Hill, and which is, again, very symbolic and psychological, the difference between, like, Silent Hill 2 and Downpour. Downpour, like, I really like Downpour, but its enemies are not memorable. I remember the Weeping Bat, and that's... I mean, I guess I remember the other enemies, but Leo and I played the game recently.
Well, the question is, too, do you remember it for a good reason, like, or a bad reason?
Yeah, the Weeping Bat I remember because it made me think twice about going under, like, overpasses.
Okay.
And so I really liked that one, but the rest of them were pretty, like, not memorable. But, I mean, you mentioned Silent Hill, and people were like, Pyramid Head and the nurses. Well, that was Silent Hill 2. And they are there for, like, such a good reason, and they have such good, like, symbolism behind them. And, yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good...
Well, the first game you had the Shadow Children. You remember that, Chicho?
Oh, God.
Shadow Children.
Oh, come on.
Those guys were so creepy.
We played a small segment of this, and it was in the school, and we go into a room, and it was literally just, like, shadow people is the only way I can describe it, but they were all babies. They're all children, and they all just grabbed you and held you in place, and it was creepy and weird, and made me feel uncomfortable. Like reverse pedophile.
I haven't heard it described like that, but yes.
No, that's a really good description. Well, and the shadow babies actually can't hurt you, but it's the long-armed creepy looking children that hold the knives in their hands. Like,
Oh man.
Those messed me up. Silent Hill 1 messed me up in a good way.
So just so everyone in chat's aware that the general chatter area, we've got, this is where we're posting our visual aids. So I don't know if Chicho would remember from the image you posted, but it was a very good post, Liz, because that's pretty much what I'm remembering.
Yeah. Those little guys, they would squeak and get in your way, and like, I don't know, like, and when you ran into them, they would like fall down and go like, and it was really like, oh, sorry, but also, please get away from me. It was very like, it's really weird, but apparently, in Australia, they had to modify the enemies in the school because it was too like graphic, I guess, for them to be like, they're like, it can't. Australia's weird.
Like, I know they're weird, but I mean, they're also.
Do you remember the Silent Hill Homecoming thing I told you about, where they banned Silent Hill Homecoming because of the scene with the drill through the lady's face?
I don't remember that.
Oh, I might have told my sister, because we watched a movie called The Loved Ones, which was an Australian horror movie, and traumatized me and my sister. Like, it was horrifying, and I was like, so they'll ban Silent Hill Homecoming because of a drill to the face, and it was one scene. It didn't even last very long, but this movie's allowed to be made. What's going on?
Oh man.
But yeah, Australia had to change something about the enemies in the school, or Konami had to change it because Australia was like, you can't have that game released here with children as enemies. Yeah, it was something weird like that. I can't remember exactly the reason, but it had to do with the children.
Huh.
But yeah, I think enemy design is I agree, it's a good one. It's my thought spaghetti on that one.
No, enemy design is very important, because the thing is that the enemies themselves should be part of the theme to the game itself, or at least the stage. Wilson. So, like, a horror game that I enjoy, but it kind of went under the radar, is one called Ghost Hunter. And
okay, yeah.
It went under the radar, and I'll be honest, I got the game because it has one of my favorite voice actors in it, Rob Paulsen, as the lead in that. And like, that was part of, which is weird to have the voice actor being part of the advertisement on the back cover of a game, but it was doing that. So in there, they have a teddy bear that will, at one stage, the teddy bear that would just come alive and chase you, and you could hear it from different portions of the entire stage. So, and it looks kind of like this.
Oh God.
Were you like a child, or no?
Dude.
So, as part of the plot of the game, you are a guy who's chasing down this ghost, which is summoning other spirits and monsters going out. So that was this is an early PS2 game, so I'm amazed at that. But that was one of the bear that was chasing you down, and you couldn't stop it right away. But the thing is, that's how demented it looked, and it really fit the theme of the game of the game itself. Because it looks nasty, and you see it, and I believe you see it in a cutscene where it grows into that monster and it chases you down. But the thing is that this looks scary on the basis of, it fits this creepy swamp that you're in too.
Okay.
And I'll be honest, at some point, because the thing is that the mechanic for that is that bear will show up in different areas of the house, but you will always hear it until you defeat the bear. So the bear could be upstairs, one floor up, and you don't even have to get there, but you're hearing the bear trying to chase you.
Mr. X.
Yeah, right.
Oh, God, I just heard that guy. I just would hear his footsteps upstairs, and I'm like, I'm gonna just go hide in a safe room for like 10 hours.
Or the clock tower.
Or the clock tower.
Or
that was a good
office.
one. There was one room when I was like, oh, I think I'm safe in here. And then he just walked in the door, and I was like, I'm not safe in here.
I think I know the one you're thinking of, or I'm maybe the only one who was dumb enough to go into the linen room, which is very tiny and only has one door.
No, mine was when you're up on the second floor. There's like almost like a reception area, and there's a safe behind the desk.
Okay, yep, I know that one.
And I was like, oh, I don't think he can come in here. Like, this feels like it's a safe room. And then he just busted the door open, and I was like, and I'm running.
And I'm done with this.
I'm out.
And what's behind door number 2? Hopefully it's not him.
What was your next thing, Brandon?
Well, actually, I haven't heard anything from Chicho on enemy design.
Yeah.
Oh, well, honestly, if we're talking about the horror genre,
hmm
I mean, enemy design, yes, but you guys made me think of something when you said, what's behind door number 2? That was the original Resident Evils, how they used the opening of doors to load the next area.
Oh, it built so much great tension doing that.
I hated that so much. Because every once in a while, I can't remember if it was in the first one or second one, but there were some points where, like, it only happened, like, once, maybe twice. But
Second
I
one.
know there's a scene where, like, when there's a loading screen and the door's opening, but then a monster pops out in that, like, it's, like, pre-rendered, like, in that little animation or whatever. So,
I believe that's the second one.
okay. But, like, I hated that because I was like, okay, is that going to happen more than just this one time? So every time I went through a door, I was like, is that going to happen again? That just always stuck with me because I played that game at a very young age. I played Resident Evil 2 when I was like 8 or 9 years old.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
I was way too young. Like, I couldn't rent R-rated movies, but, like, I would go to grab an M-rated game, and the person at the check stand's like, yeah, whatever, scan it and give it to me.
Wow, that's a big find nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was always of the mind of if she doesn't want to see it, she'll look away. And so I had to, like, monitor myself growing up.
So what you're saying is you never looked away.
Yeah, very, very rarely did I look away. But, like, I still have an aversion to certain kinds of violence. Like, if it gets too real, there's some things that I just can't handle. But my dad was always just like, I'll let her parent herself. Anyway, so we got Resident Evil 1 for Christmas, and so my birthday is in December. It's exactly 2 weeks before Christmas, and we got a PS1 and Resident Evil 1 for Christmas after my 11th birthday. And so I was, like, freshly 11 and playing Resident Evil with my dad, and then I think Silent Hill I played the following year, and, like, I don't know, like, that was, like, the start of me loving survival horror and, like, scary things, but Silent Hill messed me up in ways that I was not prepared for. I had a lot of nightmares about Lisa and about just, like, being in that foggy town, and then just, like, after that was like, oh, I don't have nightmares very often anymore.
It's like, I just don't dream at this point. My body's like, nope, you've learned your lesson. Done with that.
Before we get to the
I def-
topic, oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I think Chicho was still talking. We all just talked over him.
That's okay. Okay, so, like, the other thing, I think the most prominent animated design, honestly. Oh, okay, let me start with what game really impacted me the most, like, psychologically. That would be the first Dead Space game.
Ooh, that's a good one, too.
Like, the whole necromorph thing, and then I think it was in the second one. Yeah, it was the second one where you had to go through, like, a nursery.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there was, like, infantile necromorphs.
Oh,
So the first game really set the tone, but the second one still held true to it. The third one totally went off the rails. It was no longer horror, but
That's
yeah,
sad.
just like, so as far as, like, that horror suspense thing, like, the first Dead Space really, like, drove that home. That was a game that I couldn't play it for long lengths of time. It was like, okay, I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna get to the next save point. Okay, I'm good. And then, like, I did play it the next day. I just had to do it, like, small bites. Like, if cheesecake is rich and you have to have, like, a small slice, or you just eat it slowly, it was like the equivalent in a video game. Like, this game is too rich in its, like, gore and, like, psychological, like, freaking out. What was that noise? So I just played it slowly. And as far as enemy design, it was totally those little babies that would latch onto me. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
That's actually a good point, too, is the overall atmosphere and their focus on survival in games like that, which was actually my next point that I was thinking of was, at least for me, when it comes to elements in horror games, the focus on survival, highlighting things like hiding and avoiding the enemy, like in Clock Tower, or limited ammo supplies,
Haunt-
like in Resident Evil, or Haunting Ground. Yes.
Mhm. So, I mean, and as long as it fits the theme, I think that fits better. So here's an old one from the Sega Genesis days, Splatterhouse, the original one.
Oh yeah.
Now the thing is, that's a horror game by all accounts, and they have very, very brutal looking monsters. Like that's the tamest monster in the game. In that image I sent,
Yeah.
but it's just a beat 'em up for the most part.
Yeah, I think that falls into line of it being a horror-themed game versus a survival horror title.
Right. Now, does that mean that didn't scare the crud out of me? Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. It's like, it can be of a different genre and just be horror-themed. If they have other elements that kind of elevate higher than, you know, making it a survival element, then it can still really scare you.
Yeah, there are some levels, like the zombie Nazis in Uncharted 1.
Oh god, yeah, no, that was, what a twist.
That
Holy
was so
crap.
bizarre to me when I was like the first time I played the game back in 2011, and I'm up in the middle of the night because I would just go to bed super late, and suddenly like 2 a.m. zombie Nazis, and I was like, I did not expect Silent Hill in my Indiana Jones. I'm out. So I had to like wait until the next morning when I woke up to actually go through that level. Not a horror game, but a weird random horror segment.
Yeah, and it worked, even though it was really out of place.
Yeah, because it had a good story behind it, and it helped explain like part of what was going on in the game, so it totally worked. But not a horror game.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, dude. Okay, I'm sorry if this goes kind of off. It just reminded me like a game that's not survival horror but had like themes of horror, like suspense or whatever. It's gonna sound dumb. I'm gonna sound dumb saying this, but have you guys ever played Time Splitters?
Yeah.
Okay. There's
Yeah.
like some low res zombies in that game. I guess they're like zombies or something.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
was
no,
a
there's zombies.
horror-themed level, for sure.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, it's a whole zombie level when it's. I think it's when you go through time and you end up in the 90s. That's where you deal with the zombies.
There were zombies in the 90s, and I wasn't there for it.
I mean,
I
I was
was
there
there
for
for
it, but
I was there for it. I must have missed the zombies.
I think we all did. That was when they became cool.
But yeah, no, those guys are freaky.
yeah.
Now, we've got things like, in terms of overall design and focus on survival, one thing that always comes to mind for me is when Chicho and I were playing Clock Tower 3, and I say we, as in him, because he might know where this is going. He would be, doing the thing, the exploring and all that, and then suddenly, oh, look, the Hammerman decides to kick in a door and walk in, and he just, without saying anything, with the lights off, mind you, because he required that, would throw the controller at me without saying a word, and it's like,
Incredible. My sister used to do that to me. We played Silent Hill 1 together, and every time it got too creepy, she would like throw the controller at me. And she did that with Resident Evil 4. Anytime it got too scary for her, she was just like, you take it. And I remember she made me play the scene with Ashley when you take control of Ashley.
oh god.
And there was a point where I was like, I'm so scared, I don't think I can do it. And then I was like, I have to do it. So I just took a deep breath and was like, here we go. And I ran into it. My sister was like, you are doing so much better than I would have. And I was like, I just have to. I'm not going to get anywhere.
Survival.
Yeah, I'm not going to get anywhere by sitting here crying, but I am doing that while I'm just running as well.
Good stuff. And then you've got, the limited ammo supply that we see in things like Resident Evil, Evil Within, which we'll leave alone from there. And I'm trying to think, too, because Silent Hill, depending on the game, had more or less ammo for you. One thing that I remember from actually Silent Hill 4, which is a kind of a controversial entry in the series.
I was going to say controversial.
Yeah. Is that the enemies just Like, you could shoot them and down them, but they just get right back up.
Yeah, and then there was like the ghost that you could, or was it the ghost or polter?
Yeah, I don't
Um,
remember it very well. I just remember I unloaded an entire magazine into the one enemy, and he dropped. I reloaded, and then he literally stood back up. It's like, you've got to be kidding me.
I'm out.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I just thought of a game that really, I think, paves the way for like survival horror and like limited amount of resources. Which I haven't played it, but I've heard enough about it and seen enough of it to think of it. Maybe if one of you guys have played it, you tell me what your experience is. But Alien Isolation.
Not. I've been meaning to play that one though, because from what I've heard, that thing is amazing as a survival horror.
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
so many good things about it, but I have not played it. It's one of those people hype it up so much that I'm like afraid to play it because I'm preemptively peeing my pants.
That's an apt description.
scared.
And then I have a mutual friend who is kind of he's a video game connoisseur. I'm referring to Woody.
Okay.
Zarota. He told me that at the time that it came out, I don't know what has come out since Alien Isolation, but he told me that game has been the most frightening one that he's played.
Okay.
Hands down across anything that he's played, survival horror wise. Like that's the one that does the most like suspenseful, like, oh shoot, oh crap.
Oh.
It really does capture the original Alien film, and I think that's part of why it's so successful. Because you actually can't hurt the xenomorph like at all. If it shows up, you need to not be seen and you need to hide. So it definitely creates the tension and really does push you in the survival area, because you can have all the ammunition you want. I mean, the only thing that you can do is scare it off with fire or hide.
It's like Mr. X. It's so scary.
It works so well.
Give it to you.
Yeah, no joke.
Like I said, I'm
by the way-
preemptively peeing my pants.
Just throwing it out there. Alien Isolation is available on the Switch.
Is it really?
Oh shit! Well, I guess I'm getting it now. I love
pee
my
your pants
Switch.
anywhere. Jeez.
I need
I
this
play
to be
my
portable.
Switch. Yeah, I play my Switch so much that like I just got Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. Well, I beat 7 on it, but I've got 8 and 9 now too, and replaying 9 currently. So my Switch gets a lot of use. Oh, and Link's Awakening, Animal Crossing.
So what you're saying is you're gonna switch to Nintendo for all your games.
No, not all of them.
Okay, as many of them as you can.
Quite a few of them, yeah.
Okay, that's
I
fair,
love
yeah.
it.
It's a great machine.
I do love it.
Now, puzzles, I think, are another big thing for survival horror games, specifically the survival element. But they also need to kind of fit into the situation. Because, like, you can put a puzzle in all you want. If it doesn't need to be there, doesn't make sense to be there, then it shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
But
No.
go on.
So like, and that makes sense because like, if it doesn't need to, because it has to fit the theme of the. And I know enough about the theme puzzles. If you have to fit the theme of the area, so like a good example of this, especially in survival horror, I believe is going to be as much as I love Resident Evil for its crests and its chess pieces, the piano puzzle back in Resident Evil 1, where there was a piano that you used and you had to find the manuscript to play Moonlight Sonata.
Right.
I don't have a clip right now to show it, but
That's fine. I mean, I think most people are.
Most people know it.
Yeah.
So the thing with it, though, that's important is two things that they've taken to mind with that puzzle, which made sense. One, Jill knows how to play the piano, so you don't have to do any extra work when you're playing it with Jill. Chris does it. The second thing about it is, it's an entire It's not. The puzzle itself is only there because of a secret drawer, which is fun. However, it's in the piano room. It's in this music room, and even though zombies are running around, this room and everything dedicated to is about the music. and so it feels natural to that section.
Right. I see that now thinking about it, because like I never really put it together in that respect before. Just like you've got that whole, like, the whole room is themed around that. It's like basically like a performing center, and I really didn't think about it like that then. But like now that you mentioned that, it's kind of all running together.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, this is a good. So because I used to build puzzles, so for escape rooms, so that's
Right.
the thing, that you fit the theme to match it. Even if the puzzle, and the reason why I say that that's such a good example is because the puzzle itself is not a difficult puzzle.
No.
And it's not about the challenge of it. And in fact, once you're in that room, I think it's different in the remake, but in the original one, no, there's not really a zombie in that room at all.
I'm trying to
And
remember in the remake. I feel like there might have been one zombie, but it was like the first time you go in there exclusively or something.
oh no, it's when it opens the secret door, that's
Right.
where the zombie
Okay.
is.
Yeah.
Now I remember. Now I remember. My point is like, this isn't and it fits the whole theme of the game. This game is supposed to be, you're in a mansion that's not supposed to look like a lab, and they went to details to have this piano here. It's a bar, it's a lounge area, unsuspecting, without needing to you just know that you want to play something off of that piano, and it's aesthetically connecting it to it, because nobody goes into that room not noticing the piano either, because that's the other part of a good puzzle. A good puzzle should make it so that way you can connect the dots
Yeah. Like
without
there's a
having
clear
to.
focus here.
On the other side, what I've always found is kind of a bad puzzle is in Silent Hill. Ironically, it's there's a puzzle in there to get like the true ending of Silent Hill, and there's all these and you have to collect this vial from a garage, from a motorcycle. And as many times as I played through Silent Hill, I played through Silent Hill a couple of times and couldn't figure out what the how the pieces flew together until halfway through already subbing
Wait,
that puzzle.
if I may, are you talking about the puzzle that lets you get the red liquid to save Sybil?
I think so.
Because that's not it. I mean, to be fair, it's not. There's no true ending to any Silent Hill game.
Yeah, I mean,
there's like the very good, the good, the bad, and the very bad, or whatever.
and the weird one.
Yeah, and so I feel like to get the really good ending, and have Sybil live, like I wouldn't call that the true ending. I mean, I know this is a little bit nitpicky, and I'm sorry.
No,
it's fine.
Understandable.
It's understandable. And my point was the chain of events that got you to that puzzle is sort of the way I was. Is my point to that?
Yeah, I think that ultimately I disagree with that point, but it doesn't matter.
Or I might have just missed something. I just remembered having a
No,
whole lot of public.
It is kind of survival horror games is, and I mean especially early RPGs as well, is there isn't really a lot of there wasn't a lot of direction. Like, I don't know, Final Fantasy VI was like, go to Figaro Castle, and you're like,
all right,
can I know where that is? And they're like, no.
Nope.
And then they're like, go to South Figaro, and you're like, I'm assuming it's south, but they don't tell you have to go through like the mountain range, and through the cave in the mountains and such. And so I feel like in that instance, like, or at least like Resident Evil was never like handholdy in the sense of like, oh, to solve this you need to have blah blah blah. They were just like, this door opens with a spade key, and you're like, or an armor key, and you're like, I better go find the armor key. I don't know where, but they kind of left you to put it together on your own. And so I feel like it's not, I don't know, I don't feel like it's a bad thing to have the one side quest in Silent Hill. I think it was just the one side quest.
No, that's the only one.
Silent
Like,
Hill
all
1.
the other ones worked out really well for that. So
yeah, but I think like having that one not be immediate, like, because when you finish it, if you don't know that it exists, then you're just like, oh, well, maybe I can't save Sybil. But then you stumble across it because Kaufman's like, I've been poisoning Lisa and I'm a horrible man. And you're like, I'm gonna go find that guy.
And I'm gonna admit, my repertoire of survival horror games is not nearly as like I know more titles than I have actually played those games. So I don't know if I had a good survival horror example for it. Like I have a good example for a bad puzzle that came out in the middle of nowhere, which is the original Onimusha game, which that's an action game, but
Oh,
Horror themed, though.
I guess it is horror themed. So it's definitely horror themed, but there's a puzzle in there that is designed as and I'm still trying to figure out why they did it this way, as a mosaic puzzle.
Hmm.
And the mosaic puzzle to open this one chest, which comes out of left field for that.
Is the reward worth it, or is it just a secret they put in there?
I think, I have to look it up again, but I believe you actually had to solve the mosaic to progress to progress further out.
Okay, then yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Mhm. Now, on the flip side of it, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, when you had to do any of the puzzles that are for the when you're looking for the secret files.
Subject 16.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, assembling that video at the end.
Oh my
Right.
god. One of the Subject 16 videos, absolutely, again, me gaming at 2 a.m, and it was so creepy because it's a guy calling his cable company because he stumbled across a weird channel that you find out is I think they're owned by Abstergo, and Abstergo has this like in-between channel where they're like monitoring your purchases and like I don't know, like your heart rates and stuff
The Big
and
Brother
then
stuff.
yeah, and then the guy's like, this is really weird and I don't like this and I think that I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And then the girl's super nice and she's like, oh well my supervisor wants to speak with you, and then he gets put on hold for a second and the supervisor's like, hi, this is blah 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 with comm static, and then you hear just this loud banging on the door in the background, and then you hear the manager end with like, have a good day, Mr. whatever his name is, and I was like, what the hell is
Yeah, that's
So
definitely a horror turn at the end there.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and it's so creepy, and you're just listening like, oh, this is, obviously Abstergo's spying on him. Like, I get what's going on here. And then the ending, you're like, that guy and his kid, if they're alive, they're not happy right now.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Anyway, sorry.
That's fine. So the point with that one is the puzzles that are in there when you're solving them. Some of them is a hide and seek puzzle where you have to look for an item inside a picture. Another one is like a chess move puzzle that you have to do. And a third puzzle in some cases is you have to solve you have to rotate these circles to make them make a picture.
Right.
Another mosaic.
Yeah.
But because you're basically working in this imaginary world, these fit thematically because it's just all right. You're looking for a crazy person stuff.
Okay.
I like that your theme of the night is themes.
Theme.
Everything has been like, well, as long as it fits the theme of this tonight. Sorry, I'm just...
The aesthetic is another word I could use. I can go get my
Let's open up
It's the
thesaurus.com, everybody.
Dude, I use that so much.
Oh, yeah, writing, you need that. Otherwise, we're going to have a word crutch that no one wants to see.
and then
She said.
And then.
So but I guess to my point, it's you can have a simple puzzle that fits the game well, the game's lore or
Say
world
theme,
well.
Leo. I wasn't trying to call you out.
Okay, theme. So, but it works, right? If it's comes completely out of left field or is something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense towards that theme, it may be a really challenging puzzle, but it doesn't feel right. Is I guess my point.
Yeah, it doesn't seem as fitting as other elements do. Well, I'm going to call out some really simple puzzles that I liked. Which, it's... Like, that's the thing with the puzzles, actually, now that I'm thinking on it a little bit harder, is that it's not even so much that they're difficult, it's the satisfaction you get out of solving them.
I like when it's clever.
Yes, exactly.
Because you can give me like, oh, here's, like A, B, C, D, and E, but like when you're doing like the piano puzzle and you have to figure out when they're like the black bird on the snow and you're like, okay, that's black and then white, and so then you have to like put it to the keys on the piano, like that's clever. I think that's really neat. And then yes, like the satisfaction when you finish it. I feel like those are two important puzzle elements.
Yeah, it's a matter of balancing the difficulty with the feeling of satisfaction once you actually finish it. Like, do you get that innate feeling when you complete this puzzle, or do you get this sigh of relief, like, finally, it's done?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want the latter, you want the former. You want just to have, like, an uplifting moment of, yes! Not a, finally.
Yes. I have feelings about that on some of Final Fantasy VII Remake's bosses, where I was like, the payoff didn't even feel worth it. But that's for spoiler cast.
Yeah, right. Eventually, I swear.
Took off my headphones for that moment just so I didn't hear anything.
Oh, because you were expecting it.
Remake.
Don't worry,
No
nothing
spoilers.
was said.
Okay.
So that's like kind of all I really had on that one. Was there anything, any other points that I didn't hit?
I was going to say, and I am going to bring up the Evil Within, but not in a bad way. So back when Shinji Mikami and crew were, in his like new crew, were coming up with the Evil Within, they wanted to like, we had videos playing in GameStop when I worked at GameStop, and it described a whole lot of this, where they were like, we want to reinvent horror, and so we want to throw out everything we know about horror, and we want to like sit down and brainstorm from the ground up what makes people scared. And one of the things that they mentioned was when you have a really big moment of tension, and then like a boss is chasing you, or you can't get away from an enemy for a while, and you're just like running, or you're trying to solve a puzzle on a time limit or whatever, and then when you finish it, or you get away, or you get to the point where you're no longer like being chased anymore, that adrenaline release where you've just been so wound up, and then you get that release of the tension that you've built up, and suddenly like your heart is pounding, but you feel good, and you're like, oh my god, like this is amazing. And that's, I think, one of the things that I really liked about all of their interviews about it was it does feel good, like in the middle of a horror game when you've wound yourself up so tight, when you finally get to just like let that out.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why I feel like Five Nights at Freddy's does what they do well. I love those games, by the way. Because I feel like their jump scares are earned, because they're not all the time, and it's not something where you just expect it around every corner. Like you're watching and you're like, oh my god, where did they go? What's going on? And so when they like, you have wound yourself up because you're so tense watching for whatever's happening, and like, oh my god, where are they going to come from? And then when you see one of them coming down the hallway and you close the door, and then they're just like rah outside the door, but you're like, oh, I caught it in time. And then, like if you get a jump scare, you scream and are like, oh god, but then you like come down from it. But you have those moments where the tension is released. And I really liked that idea. Is just, I mean, and I don't think that's horror exclusive, but I feel like it's so effective in horror.
It really is. You've got like that really high point, and then the like gentle slope that's still steep to like cool off that you get right at the end of it.
And then you're just like, once you come down from that, and like, I don't know, you're being chased by an enemy, and then you finally get away from it, and you're just like on the other side of the door, like, oh my god, okay, I'm safe, I can move forward. But then, you like take that second, you put your controller down because you're like, yeah, I did it, or whatever you do. And then when you start moving forward again, you're starting to like wind yourself back up, because like, okay, well, when is he going to show back up again? Or what's going to be around this corner? What's on the other side of that door? What, and then you're questioning yourself all over again. And so then you get to like build yourself back up. And I just think that it's so well done in horror. And when you get those moments, like, earlier I mentioned the movie The Loved Ones, that Australian movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie is such a prime example of you don't get any tension release until the end of the movie. And when it starts turning around and, you know, the villain or whatever starts getting their comeuppance and, you know, the victim gets to like turn everything around, then you get that release of tension because you're like, finally they get to do it. But there's no release along the way. So for like an hour and 15 minutes, you are just wound up. And it felt so like exhausting to me. Like I didn't enjoy the movie. Partly because of that, and then also partly just because of how like intensely horrifying it was.
Okay.
I just don't really recommend it to people. But like I feel like that in games, like if you either don't get attention build up, or if it builds up for so long that you're exhausted and then frustrated because you're like, okay, is anything gonna happen? Like I feel like there's got to be such a good balance.
Yeah, like you don't want the payoff to be underwhelming when you have a build-up that's that big and that long and that heavy.
Yeah. You need to have like a really good like build up to tension and then that good release of tension and then just like build it back up, and a really good cycle of that I think can help make a horror game, and not like formulaic but like enough to where you're like, I feel this.
Right, yeah, definitely.
And so I think that and atmosphere are ones that really get me, like jump scares versus atmosphere. I think that those, if you have like well deserved and well earned jump scares rather than just like relying on jump scares, I think that's a positive. And then a really good atmosphere can just make or break a game.
It's very true.
And I think that's what I've got.
All right. Oop, didn't want to do that, but what I did want to do was figure out which window I'm opening. This window. Move on to our second one then, I think. Our second topic, which I can technically segue into a little bit from this topic being horror. And that is Most Wanted remasters, remakes, and sequels.
Yes.
So my segue for that is something that I am constantly wishing they would just do, and they still haven't because they don't want my money, apparently, is a Dino Crisis remake. And I want specifically a remake of that because they have shown so clearly that this engine, the RE engine, is incredibly versatile and incredibly fast. Like we saw with Resident Evil 7, like a lot of the innate details they can do. And then we saw with Devil May Cry 5 how fast and fluid everything can be in that engine. And Resident Evil 2 Remake and 3 Remake, like those, that style is how a Dino Crisis remake should be done. And the story is actually really good in the first Dino Crisis. Everyone kind of just like pegs it's just Resident Evil with dinosaurs. It's like, yeah, except the dinosaurs respawn because the idea is that they're constantly being, fed through a time warp. So you can kill one, leave the room, and come back, and there's another one there. And also, they are wicked fast, and it's terrifying. So put that into the RE engine and do it the style of RE2 Remake, and I would be such a happy camper. And you can reuse so many assets from RE2 and 3 Remake. It's just insane. There are so many mods out there even that you can find of people like replacing either Jill or Claire with oh my god, Regina, that's her name. And then in RE3, I think? No, it's not 3. It was in 2. Someone replaced Mr. X with a T-Rex. it looks hilarious.
I would be intrigued to see that remake because I didn't like the first Dino Crisis. I mean, I didn't like any of the Dino Crisis games, but because they were, I don't know, just not really up my alley, and I found them more campy than scary. Like, and not campy in the way like Resident Evil was campy, right, but scary. It was a lot more. I don't know. I just didn't. I found it kind of funny almost, and I didn't get into it as much because I didn't have.
Oh no, I get it. I mean, one of the first scene with the corpse in that game is Regina just slowly walking up to it as like the camera slowly pans up and does this eerie music to crescendo of like seeing a disemboweled body that's been ripped in half, and Regina's just like, that's disgusting.
Cool.
With that exact cadence of delivery, and it's like, I love this. It's so bad, but it's so good. And the puzzles are actually like really fun. They have lock puzzles for doors, where you have to have 2 halves of a digital encryption key, and then it's a password door.
Oh.
And so it's like you're doing word puzzles to get through locked doors.
Going back to those like clever kind of puzzle elements.
It's so good. And then you've got the menu system was a mess in that game, but
it was.
but the crafting that they had in there would work really well in the RE engine as well, because what you would do in that game is you would be like deconstructing or combining different like, let's say, what was it? A hemostat, so like stop bleeding. So there's a bleeding effect because, dinosaurs have sharp things and they're pointy. So you'd like combine that with a first aid kit and you'd get a better first aid kit. Or you would combine the hemostat with some other item, I don't remember what it was, and then you'd get like a tranquilizer dart that you could use on the dinosaurs. Or even just I think they called it a death dart you could make. Which is just a one-shot, one kill. I was like, this is really neat.
So it is very much like the crafting, the ammo crafting, and like combining herbs to make stronger herbs.
Yes,
kind of deal.
And also stronger ammunition, because like you can again mix the like the tranquilizers to make stronger tranks for different sizes of dino, or the death dart, which I made a bunch of, and then discovered later that the T-Rex in a heliport area could not be killed. You had to run, and I wasted all of my death darts.
Oh,
but
how devastating for you!
Yeah, it was bad because I sacrificed a number of healing items to make those death darts. Because I was like, I don't want to deal with this. I just want to be able to like, boom, you're done. And it's like, oh, you can't do that. They don't want me to cheat the system, so they cheated me.
Wait.
But the story is quite good. I will say that much. I mean, people need to read into that story a little bit.
I will say one of the things about that game I did love was that it was, in a lot of cases, smarter to take tranquilizer darts than it was to take regular ammunition, because even though it did less damage, if they put them out, it knocked them unconscious, so they wouldn't respawn.
Yeah.
Just be asleep.
It's very true.
Oh, that's very smart.
Which was kind of funny because I had one raptor next to the door of a save room. Walk over, inject it, leave.
I just like turning on like the laser grid wall. Like when I saw a raptor coming, it's like, and click, and then it just runs into the laser wall and bounced off of it. It's like, ha.
Now we're talking about because I think I missed part of the subject. Remakes and reboots.
Remakes, remasters, and sequels that we want.
Yes.
Remakes, remasters, and sequels. Okay.
And I wanted to just use that one as a segue for remakes. So let's focus with things specific remake right now, so we can stay on a little bit of a track.
That's fair. For me, and I've preached about this one. Out of all the games I've played, the one I felt that just feels like it needs a nice remake is Resident Evil Outbreak.
Oh, yes, please.
Exactly.
Because I like the concept of a big type of games that I enjoy are multiplayer, especially cooperative multiplayer.
Yes.
So like Payday 2, or the Payday series, or why can't I think of any other games? Killing Floor.
Risk of Rain.
Thank you.
Someone knows your taste better than you.
But no, it's a common thread. Even on my channel, it's like, ooh, I have a multiplayer game. If I can find some friendos to play with it, that's all I need. And,
Heroes of the Storm.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a MOBA, and that's a little different. That's competitive, not.
Yeah.
But you still work with a team.
Truth.
But or Stardew Valley actually, with its multiplayer.
Okay, yeah.
And because and this is just me. Stardew Valley as a regular game, it's okay. It's just wasn't really my jam to play it. Playing it in a cooperative mode, I can't stop playing Stardew Valley now. Or Overcooked. Overcooked is another
That's a good
example.
one.
Um,
Heap ho.
where you, Heap Ho, or if we want to kind of go back a bit, probably one of my favorite favorite one of those co-op games, Left 4 Dead.
Yes.
Those
Mhm.
co-op games that basically give you a sense of co-op,
Yeah,
co-op,
like-
you need that other person on there.
Like something objective based, basically.
Mhm. But so Outbreak, I always felt was disappointing because they had, it was like they had a great idea, they just didn't have a way of executing it really well.
It was a little
And I
too
think-
limited, just barely.
Yeah, but I think with the newer engine, and especially with especially back then when that was first coming out, VoIP was, or internet protocols were just an idea and
Yeah.
wasn't really done really well. I think with the technology that they have now, and making it into this, and instead of making it like it was, which is just a brief scenario base, because unfortunately those scenarios were really, really short.
Yeah.
And almost everyone played just the very first scenario over and over and over again. If you just did it as sort of and I think if they took a page out of some games like Payday, for example, where you had a series of stages that you could do, or you could queue up these stages and just do those stages if you
Like a
want to.
playlist kind of thing.
Like a playlist, yeah, or just make it as a cooperative campaign.
Right.
Even something that simple, that would have made all the difference in that. And I think it's just sort of a letdown that I always felt it had a great idea, it just didn't have a great execution for it. But that's one game I would love to have remade.
Yeah, I'm totally down for that one too. What about you, Liz?
Okay, this is my remake that I would die to see. I'd love it so much if we could get a remake of Parasite Eve.
Oh man, that's another
that's
good
one.
one.
I would die for a Parasite Eve remake. I love the original. It's still so good. It's still like, I mean, maybe it's not perfect, but it holds up really well. But if we could get it done, like over the shoulder Resident Evil 2 style, or if Square just wanted to use their Final Fantasy Crystal engine.
The 7 remake engine would be perfect for that with the tactical mode.
So good. I would throw so much money at a Parasite Eve remake if we could also just throw the other ones out the window.
Yeah. Or, I don't know, tweak enough of Parasite Eve 2 to make it work better, and then not
And
ever
also,
touch
like,
Third Birthday needs to just die in a fire.
If they would take Third Birthday, rename all the characters, and call it something different, I'd totally buy it as a remaster on a different console. But, like, Parasite Eve 2, I feel, would take a lot of work to make it fit in, I guess, because they change. I mean, they don't really change a lot, but they do like retcon, like how it's like the same way in like Supernatural. When you finish, the first 5 seasons, and you're like, holy shit, like the king of hell and the angels, and they're all so powerful. And then seasons like 7, 8, and 9 come along, and they're like, how do we up the ante? Okay, well, now the angels aren't as powerful. Or there's these things that are more powerful, and there's these things that are more powerful. And it felt like Parasite Eve 2 had to do that. But like, how do you top Eve?
That's true, actually. Yeah.
So
I like how you sip season 6 in your example.
you know what? We just don't really talk about
We don't
season 6
It's
because
the
it's not.
third birthday of the show, apparently.
Yeah, it's not very good. They jumped the shark a lot, but we're not here to talk about Supernatural.
Yeah, we're not talking TV shows right now.
Yeah, so I feel like if they could rework the story, or even just like leave it alone, I guess. I don't know. But I would die for the first Parasite Eve to see a remake of that. Like, put it in the Crystal engine. It's Crystal, right?
I don't remember what it was called. I wish I did.
Hang on, I'm gonna look it up. Crystal engine.
Clickety clack clack click.
Clack 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 clack. Yes, Square Enix used it. Or used. What's their new Crystal Tools?
Not to be confused with Crystal Dynamic, which they also own.
Crystal Tools, what I call what I call tools that are decent to talk to. I don't know if that's their current engine. Are they really using Unreal for it?
Could be.
They're not. They are. They used Unreal Engine 4. I thought they were still using. Maybe the Crystal demo or the Crystal engine had problems. Okay, all right, whatever. So that's my remake. Is Parasite Eve? Would love to see it.
Yes, absolutely. I have to agree with you on that for sure.
Yes, full HD. I'd cry.
Oh man, yeah. All right, Cheech, what do you got for a remake in mind?
Dude, I've been like scrambling mentally trying to think of a really good one.
This was me on our last podcast.
Yeah.
Just let's not go to something that's already happening like Tony Hawk, okay?
Oh no, yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's kind of obscure. I
Obscure
got
works.
two.
Is it the
got
game
two that keep
Obscure?
mine. No.
Lovely.
So the first one is a game that came out on original Xbox called Breakdown.
Yeah!
Yeah.
I'm down for that!
It's kind of like a precursor to the Chronicles of Riddick games, you know? It's like, not like in the stories.
In terms of the immersion system.
That first person fighting. Like, so if they were to remake that in like a 4K PC game, I mean, they could totally make it compatible with like a VR release. Not VR exclusive, but you know.
Just
obviously
let it
the
run
mod-
with PSVR.
Yeah. You could totally do something like that. That would just be amazing because I really loved the concept of that game. I feel like they could capitalize on that.
Yes.
The other that I would love to see have a remake come to the Switch would be Golden Sun.
You know what?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That would be a good one.
Because I played Golden Sun 1 and I was elated with the fact that you could carry over your save info to Golden Sun 2.
So the
How you're-
reason
so
behind
nice when they do that.
The reason behind that is because it was actually being developed as a single story originally.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that worked to...
It worked to their advantage because it was excellent.
Yeah. I just
Kinda
loved it because it worked so hard to get all the
Jin.
collision, all these like epic weapons for my characters, and like to know that that was still going to be relevant in the second one was really cool. So I'd love to see that. If they were to remake it, just like have a whole overarching story, they could just really like remake 1 and 2 and release it as one game.
Yeah.
And, so, my two.
So I'm just sending up a couple of pictures for those unfamiliar with Breakdown. You're basically fighting Mr. X with metal pants in first person fisticuffs. But yeah, no, like Breakdown's one of those games I think totally gets overlooked in a lot of respects. Just because it was so different.
Can be like it can either be like a golden thing or it can be a touch of death, because if you try something new and it doesn't take off, you know, you're screwed. But if you try something new and it's huge, and it can be so hit or miss on what it is, because something could be done incredibly well, but people just don't pick up on it and they're just like, I don't want to try it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's a failed concept. And which kind of can segue into my second one really quick. I didn't mean to like cut Leo off from his, but I remembered I looked at my notes here, and another remake that I'd love to have, and I want it as a remake. I really want it as a remake, is Eternal Darkness.
Oh,
Which
okay.
we will never get because Silicon Knights doesn't exist anymore, and who even knows who owns that IP?
Nintendo.
But okay, and Nintendo, come on! Like I would
I've researched this a little bit actually, so
I would love to see that, because that was such a clever idea. The insanity meter was so clever. The way that they made they would screw with the player. They would make the player feel like they were going crazy the more crazy the character went. And so the number of times that my sister and I thought bugs were crawling on her TV, or that someone was at the door, or that she had sat on the remote and muted the screen, like, so cool and so interesting. And like I remember one time panicking because it told me that my controller was unplugged right as a horde of enemies was coming at me, and I was like, what? And so good. I would love to see that as a remake as well.
Okay, just really quick. You just reminded me that I still have Woody's copy of the Eternal Darkness Player's Guide in
You still
box.
have that?
I do.
Sell it to me. Don't tell Woody you still have it. Sell it to me.
I remember him telling me one of the things that freaked him out the most in that game is one of the things that, totally like screws with your mind. He was saving his game and all of a sudden
Formatting your memory card?
Yeah.
Or it tells you that your memory card was corrupted and the save was deleted or something.
So
he's just like panicking. He's like, no. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, okay.
Oh my gosh. I had something where I like walked into a new room. Like that's all I did was I walked into a new room, like in the middle of a level, and it was suddenly like did a fade to black and was like, congratulations, you beat the game. Please follow up on please keep an eye out for the sequel. And I was like, what? and then yeah, it was like, and it's really cool because these things happen to the player, but on screen when they're trying to be like, oh hey, we're just kidding, the character will actually just like scream and they're like, it's happening, and then it resets the room or whatever. I walked around as an enemy for like 5 rooms. I just walked in a door and all of a sudden I was one of the enemies, and I walked around for like 5 rooms, and then suddenly his like the character's arms and legs and head started falling off, like just getting severed and falling off.
Oh,
and
man.
It was so neat. It was such a neat concept, and I'd love to see either that concept used again or just give us a remake of Eternal Darkness.
So, the link, I'm sorry to go into this, I just found some very terrifying information that I wasn't aware of, but it has to do with Eternal Darkness. So, the link I posted was to the Kickstarter that I attempted to fund for the spiritual successor by Dennis Dyack, the man who is behind Eternal Darkness. And it failed very much the bad.
Oh yeah, looks like they didn't even get half of what they needed.
Yeah,
David Hayter.
He was going to be a voice. Yeah. I just followed the link from the Kickstarter, the website Precursor Games, which was what it was, back then. Now updates to Apocalypse333.com, which is his new studio on board with Tobunobu Itagaki, formed in 2018. That is a nightmare as far as I'm concerned then.
I don't know who that is.
Dead or Alive. Yeah.
Like Dead or Alive are fine games, but
the stuff he did after that, like, particularly, The Devil's Third, and that train wreck of everything that was its development.
I love at the bottom of the website it says, "What is the nature of your inquiry?" And you can actually go and like send them an email. I'm just gonna be like general contact. Oh, yeah, general contact, name Liz, email, here it is. General question: where's my Eternal Darkness remake?
He will just forward back to you, ask Nintendo.
Oh, gosh.
Because that's why we didn't get Eternal Darkness 2. That's why it was Shadow of the Eternals. Because Nintendo still owns all of the IP and information.
Well, I mean, Silicon Knights went under for bankruptcy because I think they sued somebody. Oh, and I think they sued somebody for
they sued
somebody
Unreal.
sued. Yeah, for using their engine without their permission, but then they were like, all right, whatever, you used our engine or something like that, and they countersued into bankruptcy.
Yeah, basically what it was is they claim they were suing them, saying that they were withholding the information on how to actually properly utilize the Unreal Engine from third-party developers that were licensing the software. And Epic, the owners of Unreal, I believe, was like, no, we're not. You're crazy. And also, you don't have a license to use the Unreal Engine, which you are claiming you're using. And then he went around and said, oh, well, fine, we'll just do our own engine. And what they did is they very sloppily hid the fact in their coding that it was just the Unreal Engine. So they got sued into oblivion.
Oh my god. Well, if Nintendo has the IP, they should just remaster
Yeah,
or remake Eternal Darkness. I've said my piece. They
that's
should
fair.
listen.
Well, we've got a lot of information here on this, so if you ever want to follow up on Dennis Dyack or Itagaki and his I want to be Captain Proverb manness, you should read some of his interviews. They're hilarious. You can check out apocalypse333.com because that's interesting. Oh man! All right, I have now lost track. What were we on?
We were talking
Leo-
about remakes. Oh,
Remakes. Yes.
Well, it's
Remakes.
Leo's turn for the remake that he wants.
remasters.
No,
Oh,
remake.
no. I did that earlier.
Okay,
I
so
was-
you were ready to move on to remaster then?
Oh, is
Right.
it Chicho that didn't do his? I thought
No,
one of
he
us
did.
had. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought one of us
Eternal
didn't do our-
Darkness was his.
No.
No.
No, Eternal Darkness was my second remake.
Oh,
that I
right. No,
Eternal
Golden
Darkness
Sun
was-
and
Liz's
and
remake.
Breakdown.
Breakdown was Chicho's. Mine was Resident Evil Outbreak
Oh, right. So now we're on to remasters.
remasters.
yes.
Which because I've been one of the systems I've been using is GOG, and they have a lot of older games,
GOG is great.
and it is so great. Also, this whole idea of looking up stuff, apparently that's a huge problem that GOG has to deal with in order to get the game's licensing that they could use.
I believe that. I believe that's a
and-
nightmare and a half.
And they have some tales, like the one where they had to actually talk to a prince of a country in order to get one of those things.
Wow. That's a documentary in the making.
That's the guy who has the license, and they have to go hunt them down so they can get the license to that. But going through some of those older GOG games, because there's one of them that I really liked, and I wish they remastered it to port it to a newer system, is I was trying to remember its name. Where's that? It's I wasn't. It's off the tip of my tongue. Out. No, it's not that. Come back to me on that one.
Do I know it?
No, it's you're playing as a guy who goes to prison for death row, and a bunch of spirits and monsters attack the same prison that you're in.
I know the game.
Indigo Prophecy.
No.
No, it's
Manhunt.
no.
No.
I'm just
There's
gonna-
no ghost in Manhunt.
I've never played it.
You're like,
throwing
no, just
names
a list. Does it have a does it have
Does
a
it have a
prison?
prison?
Close enough, right?
Oh my god, I'm just gonna pull up my
God,
I-
yeah, I'm doing that right now.
Oh no, I was gonna pull up my my collection list because I have the games because there's two of them.
The Suffering. That's
yes,
what it is.
thank you. Suffering and the Suffering Ties That Bind,
too.
which was a sequel.
Yeah. So the thing is, the Suffering was one like I'm trying to play a GOG, but its system doesn't work really well with controllers and a bunch of other issues with it. But I think it being remastered is nice because I love the concept of the Suffering, where all of the monsters in it is based psychologically, and the bios on them are based upon either the history of the prison or the history of executions. Like, for example, one of the monsters in there poisons you, but the monster is designed with needles in its back because it has lethal injections
Yes,
that are
yeah,
covered.
they had great designs for everything in that game.
But one of the coolest concepts I loved in it was the idea that you were always going to be put into a position where you had to make a good or bad choice. I mean, it's a simple choice, but it's you're mostly, even though because part of the storyline is you're arrested for a crime, you don't know if you did the crime.
Okay.
And so the thing is that your decisions on whether to take these good choices or these bad choices is sort of your internal struggle with your soul. That's the concept of the Suffering.
Okay.
So he has the chance of and your ending was based upon, did you do the crime or not, or was it just an accident?
That's right. I remember that. That was a neat little element at the end of that.
Because you're accused for a murder, and you may or may not have murdered your wife, your character's wife. And so the thing with that is that, did you? And no, all the facts because you can go through all the facts and all the declarative cases, but no one knows exactly what happened during that time. They just know the police came by, you got arrested, you're accused for murder. There's not enough evidence to support one way or another. So it's really, and you don't even remember what happened. Which I love the concept, but it didn't handle well when it came into other systems, and I think that's a game that could be done.
I would
that could be
benefit from it for sure.
From a remaster, not a remake. I don't think it needs to have too much of an update. Like its graphics are pretty well and such. Just a simple remaster to get it to work to the newer systems.
Right. Yeah. Make it just optimize it for current stuff, so that way it can still be experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of reminds me of this like little indie game I got on Steam like 10 years ago, called Home, and not Gone Home. And you play as a guy who's trying to figure out, like, you're like piecing together these clues of who killed his wife. And like it was a really interesting and creepy like way it was done. It was done in like old school pixel style, and it was really interesting, but like the ending it like gave you all of these clues, and it was, you know, throughout the game you kind of create your own narrative based on what you see. Like, do I think he's innocent or do I think he's guilty? And then, but the only thing that was like a little bit I felt a little weird about was at the end you literally decide it, because the guy has amnesia or whatever, like that thing that makes you forget like the events of a traumatic experience.
Okay.
And so when he's finally remembering, you get to choose, like, so he'll be like, did I kill my wife? Did I break down this door? Did I do this? And you get to say yes or no based on the narrative that you've built for him.
Interesting.
And so it's like, yeah, it's an interesting idea, but I remember being like, oh, that's crazy. But then like the more time has passed and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, is that kind of lazy? I couldn't really decide how I felt about it. But that's what you just reminded me of, was kind of like trying to figure it all out. And
yeah, it's one of the things I liked about The Suffering is because it didn't spell it out for you. In fact, you just do like, I think one guard is about to get taken down, and you could go help the guard, or you could just leave the guard be. If you leave him be, you get all this extra ammo, but it's the bad way of going. You help out the guard's alive, but then you have to escort the guard.
A little bit BioShock in that in that way.
All right, but that's my remaster.
Very good. How about you, Chicho? What do you got?
Well, nothing like original. I think I pretty much just want what everybody wants, and that would be remastered Super Mario 64, and
that is a fun one.
Yeah,
I mean,
and Super Mario Sunshine and the Galaxy games.
Okay, so Sunshine,
remastered
yes.
Sunshine with better controls.
Yeah, I could.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that comes along with a remaster though too. I mean, you look at the Resident Evil remasters; those got reworked controls. But
if anything, like just Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 would be awesome.
Yeah,
I'm a family man, so it's like I would want that for kids, because parents can bond with it with their children.
I love Rosalina so much. She's like one of my favorite Mario characters ever. I have like both of her amiibos, and
that's actually somewhat impressive, seeing as how there was that one douchebag who bought like 400 of them and said no one else can have these.
Yeah, my friend, my and Leo's friend Steve, he managed to find one on eBay that was like very briefly on there, and it was actually only like $40.
Oh, so price to move.
Yeah, so he gifted that to me, because he just found it one day and was like, "Here you go," and I was like, "Holy shit!" Anyway, I love Rosalina so much, so
yeah,
I would love that.
Yeah, I think that honestly, Mario Sunshine is super underappreciated for like a lot of things, including its art design. I mean, that game is beautiful even today, and just giving it a little bit of polish, it would stand out so nicely among everything else here. Like, it's basically, I feel like it's the inspiration for Splatoon.
I can see that.
I want to find this meme that came out. Oh my god, what was the one Call of Duty that was like, oh, we have updated fish AI. So like when you swim towards the fish move out of the way.
That was a thing?
It was a thing. Again, this was when I worked at GameStop, but I was there for like 5 years, so I don't remember what it was.
I know what you're talking
But they were like, it was one of the selling points was that they had like a new and improved AI for like critters and for I think this is it. This is so good. And it was between like 2011 and 2016 that game came out. And so they were like, we added an AI system to it, so we have the fish move out of the way when you swim close to them. And it was like they're touting it as like some whole new type of physics thing, and how it was like such good AI. And then somebody put the Mario meme below it, and it was like 1996. Mario figured it out in 1996.
Enjoy.
Oh, it was so funny.
You got to think it wouldn't have been too hard, right? Because I mean, even prior to that, something similar to it was like the Boos in the side-scrolling ones.
Absolutely.
Or Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah, but Call of Duty was in here talking about it like it was a whole new thing. Like no one had ever considered it before. Oh my gosh, look at our awesome new AI. And everyone's like, who do you think you're impressing?
But with our system, each fish operates independently, whereas all those other games, they were a single pane. So if you got in proximity of one fish, all of the fish turned.
Basically, probably how they act.
Yeah, I mean, are you kidding me? That's exactly what they did. It's like, each fish is independently AI'd. It's like, cool, thanks for wasting all that power.
You're actually in the water, you're gonna care.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, like,
I got to hear all kinds of weird stuff. There was another driving game that was like, we have on the fly drop in, drop out co-op, and they were like, nobody's done that before. And then there's this whole like Twitter thread of other games that had done it before.
It's like literally every other game has done that.
Yeah. Lego games have done it, like other maybe not Mario, but like there's lots of games where they're like, do you want to jump in and join your friend? Like,
yeah,
I sure do.
You want to know what games have done that? Every MMO ever.
Right?
It's kind of their jam.
That's like kind of the whole point of those is you call your friend and say, hey. I guess though, technically we did get a remaster of Mario 64, but it was on the DS.
I want another one.
That's fair. I'm greedy. I want more.
To the Switch, dang it.
Honestly, yes. Bring back Virtual Console even.
Oh, be so good.
Well, my remaster is a curveball.
Ooh.
Boom.
I've never played it.
It is literally, I shit you not, it is Blade Runner meets Terminator, the graphic novel game.
Love Cyberpunk.
It is my favorite game on the Sega CD, bar none. It also, unfortunately, happens to be one of the most expensive games on the console. Thank God I already have it. But, yeah,
I've seen a clip of this.
Oh, this game is so amazing. I love everything about it. It's made by Konami. It technically takes place in a version of the Metal Gear universe. Because that's a Metal Gear Mark II as a little side companion, which you get to see in Metal Gear Solid 4.
Give it to Kojima.
Konami owns this. So we will probably not ever see anything all that great again of it, but I don't want a remake of this, specifically because there is a very special charm about this art style, and I feel and like on top of that, this kind of game just wouldn't exist anymore. It can't work today, really, in a modern aesthetic for a, quote, remake. You would change so much of this that it would no longer be the same. It's I think, probably the best digital comic game out there. There was an indie game that took heavy inspiration from this called Read Only Memory. It got a limited run release. It's on Steam, and it plays almost exactly like Snatcher.
Ooh, what's it called?
Read Only Memory. 2064 Read Only Memory, specifically.
Noted.
But yeah, and it's actually on Steam. It has in very positive reviews. It came out in 2015 on Steam, and it's. I'm trying to find the thing on here for the link so I can actually just post the damn link. But no. Oh, here we go. Copy. Paste. That is not what I copied.
I was like, I don't see anything.
I see stuff.
Yeah, you see the same image I already posted once before. But now there's a Steam link. There we go. And it's also a game that totes the equality of LGBTQ.
I'm in.
So it's a very, very inclusive game in that respect. And again, it's literally Snatcher just made by fans of Snatcher. So I'm super stoked. I love the fact that this game exists. I want Konami to be a good and just put it on modern consoles. The only way this was playable in America was on the Sega CD. Ever.
Switch.
Yeah, put it on the Switch.
Kind of segueing into something that's not it comes off of what you were saying, and it's completely tangential, and we can have a conversation about it later. But I feel like with all of the new and modern problems that cyberpunk worlds deal with, I feel like inclusionary LGBT stuff, I feel like that's just got to be the standard.
Because
you don't want to
absolutely.
Yeah, I don't feel like you can. I mean, and I know that societies can tackle all kinds of problems at once. Obviously, we live in one that is constantly dealing with a zillion issues. But when you're telling a cyberpunk story, usually you're telling a corporate story, or you're telling in the cyberpunk games, the corporations, but also body modifications. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cyberpunk that deals with the loss of soul when it comes to body modifications. At what point are you not considered human anymore? Let's just let the LGBT community be included, because we just don't need to have that as a narrative as well.
There's a lot of parallels there, so it's worth really actually bringing it forward. And 2064 kind of does that. So it's actually one of the big, it didn't put it in your face the way that the marketing was, but the people that have played it have actually self-tagged it as such. Mm-hmm. So Steam has it listed as a LGBTQ plus thing, and it's in the top half. So people have actually been no, this needs to be noted for this.
It's awesome. Anyway, that was my side commentary that I was when you were saying it was LGBT friendly, I was I just feel I want to throw my 2 cents into the cyberpunk genre on that basis.
Perfectly fair. So that was my little rant about how the Sega CD game that everyone wants and could potentially buy you a home. No, it's not that expensive. No, if it was that expensive, I might have to have some second givings on it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's definitely a game I recommend you at least look into. I know Sega CD emulation is kind of spotty in cases.
Worst case, I find an LP.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually, I first played this game through emulation because it was still pretty expensive when I was looking at getting it. I'm I don't want to spend all that much money if I'm not going to like it. So I downloaded an emulator. I downloaded the ROM. I don't condone doing that. Always support the thing, of course. But when you're looking at dropping, close to 3 digits or more, you kind of should be allowed a demo.
Yes.
So, mind you, it didn't fully work on the emulator. There was a lot of graphical hiccups. Part of the screen was obscured. I still sat there at my computer for 45 minutes playing it. I'm I just need to buy it.
There you go.
So...
I actually had a little bit of trouble deciding on my remaster. Because I just couldn't think of ones that I didn't want a full remake of.
Right.
So my remaster is a little bit of a cop-out in a sense. because I don't know how well it would actually work without it being somewhat of a remake. But I just want Lufia and Lufia 2 remastered for modern consoles. Maybe a fresh translation, the way they did like Chrono Trigger with its remaster. They like brightened some of the pixels. I mean, the gameplay is basically perfect, so you don't really have to touch that. But like, they retranslated the script. They got somebody better to do it, and then they
Probably
they
gave
like
more
made
than one person the time of day to work on it.
right. And then they also like adjusted the pixels so that they're like clearer and sharper, and they're brighter and just a little bit more like appealing to look at. And so that was mine. Is I really also just want Lufia and Lufia 2 on a modern console. Port it to the Switch, please.
See, I don't think that's really a cop-out, because again, like, you're right. If you a lot of people would just go to a remake, but then you also look at remasters of games that are basically still remakes, like Final Fantasy VI on Steam. I mean, again, we've already had that discussion of
Yes.
that particular remaster.
I've heard it. Yeah.
It looks gross. So, but then you've got the Chrono Trigger port, which again, it just looks sharper, which is all you need to do.
And it's so well done. It's so beautiful. Like the Chrono Trigger remaster, all they did really, besides changing the script and like sharpening up the graphics, is they added that monster mini game.
Yeah, so it doesn't hurt anything.
Which is optional.
Yeah, I got no qualms with that at all. I mean, that's
it's so cute. And I think we're on to sequels now.
We are, which I think this is also a potentially exciting one. Just because I feel some people might pick sequels that you wouldn't expect. So who wants to go first?
Mine is going to be really predictable, so I'm just going to go last.
Do you want a real Parasite Eve 2?
No. No.
A Lufia 3?
I feel like mine... No, there's already a Lufia 3.
Okay,
I feel like mine will be predictable to Leo, who has heard me talk endlessly about
Who's heard the rant already?
Yes.
Honestly, I can't remember, but because it's not your which one you're going to pick.
Yeah, well, we'll get there. But I feel like, Brandon, when you hear it, you'll probably be like, oh, that makes sense. But anyway, I'll go later.
Well, if you're going last, I guess I should go first. I've got two in mind, but one's less obscure than the other one is.
Okay.
So, are very obscure. If I wanted a sequel, and this is an old DOS game that I would love, is a sequel to the Star Control series.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that one.
So, just because it's out, it's one of the two I have that are both, and they're both going to be out there. But Star Control, you play as a starship. Like Star Control 2 is amazing because you play as a starship that you actually go off and explore. Or actually, I think that someone is trying to make like a new sequel to that. In which case, I'm not going to go with Star Control, but I will go with Dungeon Keeper series.
A proper Dungeon Keeper, right?
A proper one.
Not that freemium
not that mobile,
thing.
The premium thing, the pay to play way that goes. No. Because Dungeon Keeper is such a good like. You just build a dungeon and work your way as the bad guy, trying to keep everyone else out. It's amazing.
Yeah, there's not a lot of games where you play as the villain, and technically in that game you are the villain, so...
I am the bad guy, and I'm building my entire dungeon around it. And so, like, it was kind of neat to just build your own dungeon. I think that one would do that. Oh, crap, I forgot the one I actually wanted. So, the other one that might be out there is... Total Overdose is the other one. And there's people who just don't know what it is, or people who laugh and know exactly what it is.
I'm the latter.
So Total Overdose, the line that sold me on looking into this game was, take Max Payne and Tony Hawk and put them together, and here you got it.
Yeah, that's not wrong.
So, because you have the bullet time, shoot 'em up like Max Payne does, but you can do it with style and finesse. And my favorite absolute thing about it was they designed the combo meter to be in tune with the background music of the game.
I didn't know that part. That's cool.
So what would happen is, and it's a small detail, but if you and you usually only see it in really bigger stages, you can see it pretty, but for certain particular songs. So One of them is one of the things that they'll do
Oh,
in it. Aw, that's a kitty. But anyway, so
Distraction.
one of the things into it is so you would get into a combo meter. Let's say you manage to take out 2 or 3 or 4 bad guys. Until you hit the 5th bad guy, all you hear is just like 3 or 4 of the background tones of the song. Once you start getting to about 10 guys that you're fighting and fighting down, then you start getting higher pitches, some of the more background music for it. So instead of it playing just the bass line and the drum beats and such, now you're having the lead guitar coming in, the keyboards coming in, and then once you're starting to rock out and you are up to a huge combo, the lyrics and the whole song is playing itself on loop in magically, but it just crescendos to that.
That's very nice. Yeah, no, that. I would almost say it's like a hyper campy, colorful GTA.
Oh, super colorful, and it does not take itself very seriously. It knows what it's about. It is got a lot of cheese for what it is, and it is amazing though.
Dude, cheese is delicious.
And cheese is delicious.
I love cheese.
Yeah, see, you got to chime in with at least that much. It's like, I like cheese. Give me those nachos.
Those are the two I would. One
I had
just would wind up.
nachos earlier.
Illuminati.
But it's nachos. You could. That's not Illuminati. That's a lucky guess.
So good. I literally had them on tacos earlier. So good. Anyway,
but yeah, those are my two that I would want to have a sequel to. That one is just because I want a proper sequel. The other one is just because I want a sequel.
Hey, that's fair. All right, how about you, Chicho? What do you want to see a sequel to?
I want an actual sequel to Mass Effect 2.
Oh, that's
Mass
Just-
Effect 3
I
is
know.
so
actually,
good.
I actually genuinely liked Mass Effect 3, but I
We
know
just
there's
needed
a
a
lot of
better ending.
Oh, okay. So I
Yeah.
don't have to go to my kitchen and get my fire extinguisher for that burn of his.
Ooh,
Right,
man,
right.
that was. I was gonna say, do you need some
I
aloe
would
vera?
like the endings more if the indoctrination theory was like confirmed to be canon, but I digress. Okay, so I don't know because honestly, I thought about this topic before. Like, what game do I really love that I'd love to see a sequel? And honestly, I think every time I've ever thought that it happened. So, like for example, if you had asked me this years ago, I would have said I want a sequel for The Last of Us.
I hate
And
you.
Aw,
I hate that you're
yeah.
like so on board with that. You're like, you know what? I just need to. No, don't stop thinking that. Keep thinking that. It's like I want a
Yeah.
sequel to this. Make it happen.
Think about the sequels I want.
Right?
Think about other people's sequels.
If you are magical in this way and you can just make that happen with your mind by wanting it really hard, just want my sequels for me.
Dude, I'll give you. I'll give
Well.
you my Christmas list for God's sake.
I mean, I know there's already a sequel for it, so maybe we shouldn't talk about it. But just the fact that The Last of Us is getting a sequel, okay, awesome.
So good.
I'm happy because the first game really, wife and I got attached to the story, and me especially because the whole like father-daughter dynamic, the bond that's built in Joel.
Yeah, I just have gameplay issues with it. I've never rage quit at a game before until that game.
Ooh, ouch. That's always.
I love the story. I love the graphics. I love the characters. Like Naughty Dog knocked it out of the park, but there were a few times where I was like, I'm going to either throw or break my controller if I do not walk away right now. And then I replayed it either last year or the year before, and I was like, I'm like a better gamer now. I bet that it won't be as frustrating this time around. And then there were points where I was like, I'm gonna break my controller if I don't walk away right now. And I'm not playing on the hardest difficulty, but I'm not playing on the easiest one either. And so I feel like it's just being a bitch. And so I love that game. I might play it one more time, but after this, I think I'm just gonna I'm just gonna watch an LP because
It's one of those things. Like the mechanics and everything was great, but the story is what sold it to me.
oh
It's
yeah,
one of those things. It's like once I've played it all the way through, I was kind of done. It's like I didn't want to go through it again. I might years from now, but I felt so sad when I finished it. It was like reading
Yeah.
a novel.
I loved I mean, I played it the one time, and then I was so emotional at the end of it. Like I cried, I was sad. I thought a lot about that ending moment, and because I remember my sister and her boyfriend were like, do you feel like she believed him at the end? And I was like, I don't think that's what mattered. Like, I think what mattered in that moment when he lied to her is she needed him to stick with his lie. And that was it. Like, if he continued on and was like, yes, what I told you was true, then she can be like, okay, like, it's just a gut feeling that I believe otherwise. But as long as he holds that lie with me, then I'm okay. But if he at that moment had a change of heart and was like, no, they really could have done it, she'd have been like, take me back there. And so I don't think it matters whether she believed him or not. I think what mattered was that he stuck to his lie. And I don't know, I loved that ending so much. But I played it because I thought The Last of Us 2 was going to come out last year.
It was supposed to.
Yeah, so I replayed it because I was like, I haven't played it since 2013, and I think it really deserves to have, because I loved everything about it except moments of the gameplay, not all of the gameplay. There were just certain moments that made me rage quit, and again, I got to those moments and was like, oh yeah, no, it's still that way. But I'm with you, it was so good, and I think they're just gonna do better. Like Uncharted just got better and better as it went. Like, I think they're going to kill it with this one.
Well, I'm going to go next just because I feel like Liz is going to... It's Liz's thing, so I'll go ahead and go next.
She asked to be last.
Yeah. I had to think about this because I haven't finished this one. In fact, it's been a long time since I've even touched this game. But I feel it deserves better than it's gotten so far.
I'm intrigued.
And I'm not... Because it was reviewed well at the time. But there is zero talk since then.
I'm in suspense.
I want a sequel to Lost Odyssey.
Oh, I've heard such
yeah.
good things about it. But yeah, no, I haven't heard anybody say anything about it.
This is literally what we would have had for the next Final Fantasy if Sakaguchi was still on board, because he made this game.
Oh.
I mean, look at that battle system. That is Final Fantasy VIII status system down there. Plus, you've got the trigger system.
Which was, yeah, straight up 8.
So, I want a sequel to this game because nobody talks about it, and when I say it kind of doesn't deserve the way it was got, was it is only playable on 360.
Mm-hmm.
It's, to my understanding, not playable on Xbox One, and there is no PC version, even though it was published by Microsoft Game Studios.
Huh.
So
That's so stupid.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of got the shaft in that respect, and that really upsets me, because the story is so interesting in the themes that they talk about, the way they cover the life of this individual named Kaim. Plus, the delivery of the voices and stuff is done very well. I mean, this is basically the Final Fantasy game we never got, except we got it under a different title and publisher, but then nobody asked for another one.
And I have heard nothing but really good things about it.
So, I mean, it's kind of upsetting because I myself have not finished it. I've always meant to, go back, start over, and just, play through it. But it's also a 4-disc game, so it's this is a daunting 360 title.
That's me with The Last Remnant. Just a daunting title.
Yeah. Last Remnant's
It's a lot of a game.
Yes, it is. So, that's where I was at with sequels. I also have a couple, 2 games here that I kind of have a mix of things I want, but I'm going to have Liz go along with her more streamlined approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Streamlined is correct, although I feel like... Okay. So my answer, and I'm so excited to talk about it, is Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Leo, you should have seen that coming.
Yeah, I was kind of like, oh, that's the one. That's the one. But let's see if this is going to be different.
I was gonna say, didn't it get American Nightmare?
Well, so technically, American Nightmare is like
Isn't it like a
DL.
prequel?
No, it's a sequel. It takes
Okay.
place after, it takes place, I think, like 2 years after the game. But it's
Okay,
like you can play it in like 3 hours. Like
Okay.
I consider it more like a DLC.
So it's a standalone DLC. I get you.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know, standalone. It does kind of rely on you knowing the game, but because I love Alan Wake. I actually own a fan blog to it because that's just who I am as a person.
That's fine. You be you.
I have collected like every piece of Alan Wake merchandise that I can feasibly get my hands on. There is a lanyard and a flashlight, which go for a whole lot of money that I just am not going to shell out for a lanyard and a flashlight.
Weak.
I know, I'm working on it, but like I've got the collector's editions. I've shelled out so many times for this game because I bought myself a copy. I bought myself a copy on Steam, and then when it was being taken, there was a point. Well, there was a point when they were finally putting Alan Wake 2 on indefinite hiatus, because they couldn't get anybody to back the concept. Because when Alan Wake was released, I have an absurd amount of knowledge about Alan Wake, by the way. When Alan Wake was released, as Leo also knows, it was released on the same day as Red Dead Redemption. So it it was doomed to fail sales-wise, because are you going to go for this brand new IP from a company that like hardly anybody knows, or are you going to go for Rockstar's new title? Obviously, you go for Rockstar's.
That wasn't even a new title. That's a sequel.
Yeah, from Red Dead Revolver. So
which they bought the rights to from Capcom.
Oh. Well, so Alan Wake, it's a cult hit. And it's garnered just a ton of money, but initial sales were not good, so nobody wanted to back it. And Remedy is like such an anomaly on the charts because they are under Microsoft Games, but Microsoft funds their games, but they're allowed to do whatever they want. All they have to do is show a concept of like a concept trailer or like a concept demo or whatever, and show it to the board or whoever over at Microsoft. And then as long as Microsoft likes it, they're like, okay, here's your huge ass budget, make whatever you want.
Interesting.
And so it's such a weird, it's like all they have to do is say, this is where we're headed. And they go, okay, whatever you want. Because like technically Remedy is an indie studio. They just are funded by Microsoft.
So it's kind of like Microsoft just has right of first refusal for all games almost.
Right. And so when they refused Alan Wake 2 because sales were poor, Remedy did some shopping around and nobody was interested. So they were like, we can't keep working on a game that nobody's going to back and nobody's going to publish. So we put it on indefinite hiatus. At that point, Humble Bundle put it on for super duper sale. So I got it on Humble Bundle and I gifted the game and all the DLCs because I already owned them all, but it came with like director commentary, it came with the art book, it came with the script for the game, all the manuscript pages, like all of the TV shows and interviews within the game, just a ton of really cool stuff. But I've gifted that game like 25 times to people when it goes on sale because I'm like, they will give me Alan Wake 2 someday.
If I keep giving them enough money, it'll happen, right?
I will personally fund Alan Wake 2 if I have to. So then they did Quantum Break, which I love. I played 5 times last summer within like a month and a half. And Control is really good, but so Control actually links to Alan Wake. It takes place 10 years later in the same universe.
Oh, is that why they had that pseudo teaser thing that you can find as an Easter egg?
Yes. Well, there's like several things in there that talk about like the happenings over at Bright Falls and how there's like these. So in Control, there's all these like altered world objects or altered world events and then objects of power. And how like there's a typewriter. I believe it's the typewriter that's an object of power, and how, you know, everything that happened there was an altered world event. And so the Federal Bureau of Control have been investigating it, and they've got all these files on it, but it confirms that Control takes place 10 years after Alan Wake does. And in fact, there's a DLC coming out this year that actually crosses the two of them over, where Jesse either goes back or goes to Bright Falls, or something happens where it gets explained, like, what's going on with Alan. And anyway,
that's actually really dope. That's got me stoked, because
it's so cool.
I liked Alan Wake quite a bit. I liked it more than I expected to. Like, I expected to enjoy it, but I didn't expect to, like, be way into the environment, which is kind of, you know, where I live, Pacific Northwest. So maybe that's what did it to me.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. Like, when it first came out, I spent an entire weekend with my sister and her boyfriend, and we played it, and I had weird dreams, just the most bizarre dreams, very, you know, like Twin Peaks-esque.
Right. An obvious influence, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I think they've absolutely confirmed that David Lynch and Twin Peaks are. I mean, there's even like the Lantern Lady, or the Lady of the Light. Like, she's 100% based off of the Log Lady, and things. There's like Twin Peaks references throughout, but yeah, they've like oh, hang on, I was going somewhere with this.
Alan Wake.
I had a train of thought and then I just immediately lost it. Anyway, yeah, so they've officially decided that they're crossing over Alan Wake and Control. I just didn't expect to like Alan Wake as much as I did, and now, like, I'm obsessed with it, and I can just on the dime just start talking about it, like, with the weirdest amount of information. And playing through the game, I started playing it through it for some friends, and I would just stop and start talking about, like, the posters on the wall, or like what this sign means, or who this character is. It is like a complete background story. Like, it's a lot, and I apologize. I could do a whole thing on Alan Wake.
Oh, and the old gods of Asgard being poets of the fall.
Yep,
and that was the reason for delistings. Well,
they actually got all of the rights back, so
yeah.
It's been listed back again. But in Quantum Break, actually, there is a band called Stone Crow, and it's just one of the characters wears a T-shirt that's a Stone Crow T-shirt, and if you look on the back, it's like their tour dates, and one of them is Bright Falls, Washington, from Alan Wake, and then one of them is the place in Finland where Remedy Studios is located.
That's a good Easter egg.
But Stone Crow, if you look beneath their name, it actually says Stepchildren of the Elder Gods. Which I thought was really clever. But Poets of the Fall did a song for Control.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's part of the best level in the whole game, the Ashtray Maze. So good. But anyway, a couple years ago, Sam Lake announced that he is shopping around for an Alan Wake TV show.
I remember that.
And yeah, and he actually found some people who he's got a showrunner, and he is actually helping work on the script, like the writing for it.
Nice.
So he is heavily involved in it. And I think last year they announced that they have a studio that's going to pick up on it, but I don't know what it's going to be like. But I'm just saying, I would die for Alan Wake 2.
All right.
I would. That was my long, extended rant about how much I love Alan Wake, and would just love an Alan Wake 2. But I had to go last because I knew I could just talk your ear off about it.
Hey, that's fair. We've all got those little quirks with some form of media.
We all have those quirks with a particular game.
Oh yeah.
You get me with Fallout 2, and it is every little lore and detail with that one.
Yes. Me and Leo have sat each other through these talks where he's talking about Fallout and I'm talking about Alan Wake, and we both don't retain all of the information, but we're like, this was fun. I will talk to everyone about Alan Wake.
Well, I've got a couple of like ones that fell under both, where it's like I would take either this or that for it. And both of these games, I'm going to say series at this point, I would say I would go with any of the three whether it be a remake, a remaster of some sort, or a sequel. And the first one I'm going to go with is Shadow Hearts.
And Shadow Hearts 2!
And Shadow Hearts 2, and even
Shadow Hearts.
From the New World.
Shadow Hearts 2 was the only one that I watched my cousin play it, and Shadow Hearts 2 was so interesting, and the battle mechanism was really neat.
I love the Judgment Ring system because it literally, it's like, oh, it's a traditional turn-based RPG, except you are not allowed to just mash attack. You have to pay attention, because if you miss, your attack will do nothing.
Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah, and that's a really good way to, like, I feel like we talked a bit about this with the Final Fantasy VII demo. Don't worry, Chicho, no spoilers.
Might have already ripped his headphones out at that point. He's like, nope.
He's like, I refuse. But the, like, keeping your audience engaged with the battle system, some places or some companies try to, like, artificially do that, but like Final Fantasy 13 tried to artificially make you have to pay attention, but then you could auto battle. But then Final Fantasy VII Remake, like, even in the demo, you're like, okay, well, I actually have to like, I have to pay attention because sometimes I have to know, like, my physical attacks aren't working on this enemy, so now I have to switch over to whatever magic I'm using. Or, oh, Barrett has to do this one, so I have to switch over to him. And, like, I thought that was, like, that's a really good way to keep your audience engaged without it feeling like it's inflating it or like it's, I don't know, like, tedious. Yeah. But Shadow Hearts did it in such a way that was so cool.
Like, the only thing I would say is get rid of the SP system, because I hated when I went into the negative and I couldn't control anything and they were literally just beating each other up.
It's been a long time since I watched my cousin play it, so I don't remember that. But
yeah, so basically when you're SP, this is going to sound dumb, but it basically means sanity points. Because you're fighting these demonic beings, and it takes a toll on your sanity based on, and the point total at their maximum is based off of, like, their experiences in this field already. So, like, the main character is Yuri, who can transform into various demons by, quote, harmonizing with them. So he has a greater understanding of the demonic worlds, so his sanity is greater. But Alice, who has virtually no sanity points, has basically no interaction with this. This is her first time. Have fun. So it's
neat.
Yeah, and those items are, like, not like the items that replenish sanity points, which are required for Alice. And actually some skills even take additional sanity points on top of your MP, depending on what it is. So replenishing that's difficult, because those items, if I remember right, you can't just outright buy them. Like, you have to do, like, a lucky ticket system, which you can, and it's like a judgment ring, basically, where it's like, oh, what prize do you get? Use the judgment ring to pick your prize, that kind of thing. And you want it to land on those items because there are technically a finite number of them.
You know what I remember from Shadow Hearts 2, weirdly?
That the game is drop dead gorgeous for being a PS2 title.
Oh, so pretty. Yes, but I also remember, weirdly, the, what was it? The one, like, samurai guy having that awkwardly weird relationship with, or, like, it was implied that him and Anastasia were gonna, like, get together or something, and she was, like, 12.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other weird thing is that technically that samurai was Yuri's cousin. The main character's cousin.
I didn't remember that. I just remember that one scene when they were, like, going back to their own times or something, and Anastasia was, like, holding on to his leg, and he was, like, protecting her, and it was, like, weirdly just implied that they were gonna be together. And I was like, what?
Yeah, and the biggest gripe I have with the first Shadow Hearts, because I 100%ed that one, was that, like, you basically become a seraphim is like your final form is you are basically an angel, like with the powers of everything, and that's what basically your reward is for getting everything. Plus, you get a alternate ending, the quote good ending, and that is non-canon, which makes me angry because it immediately like is contradicted when you start up Shadow Hearts Covenant.
Start Shadow Hearts Covenant.
Did you say don't start it?
Yeah, just don't start it, and then you don't have to worry about it
No,
anymore.
my canon ending is the story ended with the good ending, where the girl that is clearly dead in his arms in the cover is not dead.
Yep.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
Alice ain't dead. She's just on vacation.
That,
Doesn't what's her bucket? Karina or Katie or whatever her name is at the K. Isn't she like his mom?
I don't remember.
She like goes back in the past and like she like sacrifices herself or something like that, so she ends up in the past and like gets with his dad.
God, I don't remember all of that stuff because the
Did he
translation
do the
is
nasty
bizarre.
and the pasty?
He did the nasty and the pasty.
But
oh man.
yeah, no, Shadow Hearts is great. Don't really recommend people go out of their way for the first game in this series, which was called Kodelka. That is like so many good ideas done so badly.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth looking at if you're already a fan of the first Shadow Hearts, because Kodelka is in Shadow Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And a gentleman by the name of Roger Bacon, who is...
Nice.
Yeah, he is in Kodelka and in Shadow Hearts 1 and 2. So... yeah, they're definitely, like, connected. And the worst part is about this series is that, from what I can tell, it's not clear who actually owns the rights right now, or at least at the time of my initial researching on it. So getting a remaster would be difficult because the developer, because oddly enough, Midway Games, who published the first two, were not the owners of the IP. They just agreed to publish it. Same thing with Xseed. They didn't own it. I think it's Azure Studios, which has since dissolved, not sold, dissolved to my understanding.
Went the way of Silicon Knights.
So the question is then, who actually can do anything with this property? And that's where there would be an issue with this.
Okay. It sucks that so many of these great games that we would love to see like ported or remastered or remade, like nobody knows where they belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens.
I'm thinking about it now. I remember Parasite Eve actually Square let the copyright or like their hold on it or something run out, so they actually lost the rights to the name back to the author of the novel.
That's right, and I know a lot of the plot points and characters were taken from the novel too, so technically they can't do anything with it unless they relicense.
There was somebody who found out that in the UK, they renewed a Parasite Eve title.
Really?
Yeah, I'd have to find it again, but they renewed the title for it, so there's the idea that either they are going to do a remaster or remake, or they're going to do a new title. I secretly hope it's not a new title. Hang on, let's see. Parasite Eve. Oh, look, Parasite Eve Remake was the most.
It's because they want it. And by they, I mean we.
Everyone. Let's see. I know you worked on Third Birthday. We don't talk about Third Birthday.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I would have to find it again, but I don't even remember where I heard it. I watched so many like YouTube gaming videos just all day, but it looks like on March 5th there was an interview done by one of the guys who worked on Parasite Eve, who said that he would be happy to do a remake because he thinks that it would be a waste for the game to just go
away. Yeah, I remember that. I actually remember that interview. Yeah, they're like, we would like to do another thing because it would suck for this IP to just disappear.
Yeah, it was like 2 months ago they did that, but I'll see if I can find where it was. But yeah, apparently they renewed the license for the name, but only in the UK, so nobody knows if it's actually going to be like something that they're going to continue with, or if they still have the rights, or if it's going to go the way of the Chrono Trigger. They had like a Chrono Break. Was that the one, or was that a different game? I think they were going to work on Chrono Break, and then they let the Chrono Trigger.
IP fall.
Well, they let that license for Chrono Break
license.
expire.
Mm.
Or the copyright for it or something. But yeah, apparently they've done that with Parasite Eve recently enough that people are like, are we getting a remake? Are we getting a sequel? Is it going to be ported? Like, any one of those would be incredible.
Yeah.
Any single one of them.
Well, Chicho, Leo, anything else?
As far as remakes and such, none that I can think of off the
Any
top of my head.
commentary on what we've discussed this evening?
Shadow Hearts I never actually played, so I'm not gonna put my 2 cents into that one very much. I know of it, but never got a chance to.
Cousin, that's the only way I know.
Yeah, I think I've said my piece as far as remakes go, because like I said earlier, I don't really think of any now because anytime I've ever thought, oh, like a remake there, it eventually happened. So
Why do you think about my games?
Could you think really, really hard about Alan Wake 2 for me?
Yeah, start
my wife
thinking.
really likes the Alan Wake game actually, so we might go back and play that on my 360.
Oh,
So,
you know what? Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. There's more Alan Wake news.
Oh?
And it happened last year. It was like last May, I think. Remedy. So technically, Microsoft owns the rights to all of Remedy's games because they're creating them under the Microsoft license, or like they're funded by them essentially. So Microsoft owns the Alan Wake, Max Payne got sold to Rockstar.
Yeah.
But they own Alan Wake and Quantum Break and now Control. But last May, Microsoft, they every so often Microsoft just shells out the royalties for all of the copies sold of Alan Wake. And they made, like last May, they got a royalty check for like 13 million or something like that. I don't know if that's the exact number, but they got like a few $1 million in Alan Wake royalties. So they purchased the Alan Wake rights from Microsoft, and now they own the IP themselves. Like, it is theirs to do with what they want.
So hold on. They use the royalties they got for making the game to just buy it.
Purchase it. Yeah,
That's
now they
great.
Because now they didn't own it before. So if Microsoft said no, we don't want you to make an Alan Wake 2, they could be like, okay, well, let's work on our next game. But now they're like, we gonna do what we want. We gonna make Alan Wake 2 if we want. And that was when they announced that they were working on the TV show, or maybe it was like in May of 2018 then. But they were like, we're gonna start working on the TV show. And then Sam Lake did an interview because everyone was like, does this mean we're getting Alan Wake 2? And he's like, we really want to sit down with it and make sure that we know where we want to go and what we're doing. And, so he's like, it is on the table. We just don't know when.
Yeah, that's actually a surprisingly common practice to repurchase your own IP to keep it. And it's mostly so that IPs themselves have their rights split. And so one of the things that you could do, so like for example, and I don't know if it's still happening right now, but director back in years ago, I think his name is Avid Arand. He is the director that made Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Okay.
That film owns the filming rights specifically to Metroid, but to the Metroid series. But the only reason he bought that is so nobody else could have the movie rights to Metroid. So.
Heck.
Not necessarily, because the next guy who was looking into getting those rights was UA Boll.
Hero.
So like,
nobody wants that.
Even though he could not get a script or storyline to get it, it was better. The way he saw it was better that he at least had it, so nobody else could take it.
Or specifically so he couldn't take it.
So he could take it.
Uwe
specifically.
Boll couldn't take it.
But it is a fairly common practice on it. That's a lot of the sometimes it's a lot of games like Sid Meier's Civilization series. Sid Meier's owns the rights to that, so he could just keep retaining it internally. And then he works for 2K, and so 2K keeps those rights, so that way they could just have the IP. Sometimes it's the IP is more important to have than it is to just use.
Fair enough on that one.
And sometimes some people will get the IP and then lose it in weird ways. That weird story in for one of the games in GOG, they never released what the game was, but there was one of them where they had to where this guy lost the IP rights to the game as part of a divorce to his ex-wife, and his ex-wife is bitter and doesn't want to release it, even though they were going to pay her for it. It just doesn't want to. IP rights can just be handled that way.
Incredible. That's like a level of spite that nobody should
I want to know what happened there.
Wow.
But yeah, so getting it's a fairly common practice to do that, especially if your IP rights are because you could divide up the IP rights to a thing. Like if a novel is created, the rights to make it into a video game or the rights to make it into a movie are separate entities than the novel itself.
Okay, so yeah, I getcha. It's just basically media right over the concept.
Correct.
Yeah, it's like so I think also part of Microsoft holding on to the Alan Wake rights was them being able to be like, well, we're funding you, so you're going to do what we want you to do. And then, they're like, we own the IP to Alan Wake, and we don't want you to work on that right now. We want you to work on something that we believe will bring in new money, not this thing that is not guaranteed. Yeah, so they're like, let's, so them owning the Alan Wake rights now, like that was pretty cool of Microsoft to be like, sure, we'll let you buy them.
And in those, and that kind of notice, it's sometimes they'll just sell out the rights like that pretty easily, just because they're not going to do anything with it. And it was more, so copyrights, for example, have to be renewed.
Yeah.
And so one of the issues is and this is just me. So a little history with me, I've owned my own businesses repeatedly. For a couple of businesses, and so one of the things that you can do with those rights is that you can sometimes it's a good practice to not take the loss, to keep renewing everything for something you're not going to use.
Right.
You're Disney.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to IP rights, there was a big problem in hullabaloo a couple of years ago when Disney bought the rights to Lucasfilms.
Right.
The reason why is Lucasfilms is a parent company to LucasArts. So there is a stack ton of IPs for LucasArts games that are not being made, with the exception of, I think, Star Wars. But
Full Throttle HD.
Exactly. Full Throttle. Anything with the Indiana Jones title has not been worked on.
No, I mean Full Throttle HD is happening.
That was happening.
I just remembered that. I was like, I think Double Fine? Because I think...
Yeah.
I love Double Fine.
But, okay, yeah, so that actually makes sense, too, because we're seeing more of that with, like, The Witcher, because, again, that was a nightmare for, technically for CD Projekt Red, because I guess the author tried to come at them for more money, even though it was like, no, you already agreed to the one lump sum payment versus royalty payments. You can't just come at me now.
Yeah, they had a whole issue because he didn't think that it was gonna make any money. Exactly. He was like, whatever, and so then he was like, I'll just take one lump sum. And then when he saw it was making money, suddenly he wanted in on it, and they were like, that's not how that works. This is what we agreed on. And so I believe that the guy threatened to sue.
I believe it went as far as him attempting to sue, because...
And then it was just like, oh, it's never going to go in my favor. So,
yeah, I think that's what it came down to. CD Projekt Red's like, look, dude, you're trying to kind of go against a contract that we already have with you. That's going to end poorly on your end, not on ours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of more we could talk
Yeah.
about regarding that, but
Yeah, if we want to do another stuff, that's fine. But yeah, there's a different like that's now going into EA for that one. That's one of the big problems that EA has is that they
go to
have all these
EA
IP.
to die.
Yeah.
Hmm. And not a market strategy I would go with, but that's what they're doing. But then they have the rights to a lot of others. They have the IP rights to a lot of things, and in some cases, they're holding on to the rights for a lot of IPs just so nobody else can get the rights to it, like Westwood Studios for Command and Conquer
Yeah.
series, for example, or actually most of Westwood Studios. They have a lot of really great games, but series, but they're just hanging on to the IP for it.
I mean, did you see all the one infographic or whatever that was like all the companies that EA acquired and then were destroyed under them or like dissolved under them?
I haven't seen that graphic, but I was hoping to find that graphic.
Yeah,
I need a pie chart for this.
No, it's pretty rough because there was a whole thing like people, like companies go to EA to die because they acquired so many like studios and then dissolved all the projects they were working on and are now like work on Battlefront.
Yeah.
And like I think BioWare was one of the bigger ones that they acquired and then were like, yeah, but we don't really want you to work on Mass Effect or Dragon Age anymore. We want you to work on Star Wars, on Battlefront 2, which no one gives a shit about.
Or specifically, we only want you to work on Mass Effect forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk Visceral Games. The guys that did Dead Space and then
went to EA to die.
And then EA said, we want to murder you, and Visceral said, we would much prefer you didn't, and EA said, tough shit, and then we got Dead Space 3.
Yeah, and then now what have we seen from Visceral Games since?
Their liquidation.
Yep.
Yeah, see? Like, you just go to EA to die.
Yeah. Or,
it sucks.
Or, it was one of Telltale Games' weird strategy. They would purchase far more IPs than they could work on.
Oh god, yeah, Telltale. That's such a tragic story.
Mm. Or, you could fake out an IP, which Square Enix once did to I believe to the guys who made Payday. Essentially, Square Enix hired the guys to make Payday to make an engine for a Viking-based Final Fantasy style game. But the way the contract was written is that basically once they did the game, that they had the ability to they only pay upon their acceptance, not their completion. So they designed this giant engine, and at the last day, their CEO, and there's a whole storyline with that particular CEO back then for Square Enix, basically turned around and said, "Nah, we don't want it." And used a totally different engine to build, I believe it was FF13. But because they said no at the last second, they don't have to pay them, and they lost a ton of work and nearly went bankrupt for that.
Wow.
Now, fun side story on that. If you play Payday, or Payday 2, that's the backstory to Wolf. That character is literally the spite that the guy had.
I don't know if you guys ever played the game Murdered Soul Suspect, and we're like off topic now, and I apologize, and I think we're running off of 2 hours now.
Yeah, we're at the 2 hour mark for sure.
Okay, so I'll make this one quick. Did you guys ever play Murdered Soul Suspect?
I did not, but I had some interest.
I really like it. I got it. I played the crap out of it. You can 100% it in one go because a lot of it is collectible based.
Okay.
I definitely recommend it. It was really good. But what happened was this company, they were working on Murdered Soul Suspect, and then they were like 60% done, and we're like, okay, now we need to start shopping around for, a publisher. So they started going around and got told no a whole bunch, and then Square Enix was like, okay, well, we'll publish it, and they were like, oh hell yeah, like we're gonna finally get this. So they signed the deal, and then Square was like, okay, but we want you to be able to have it ready to go in 6 months. And we want you to change like basically most of what you have going on. So they had to they wanted different gameplay. They wanted something, because a lot of it was a little bit more LA noir, where it was like, so Murdered Soul Suspect, you play as the ghost of the guy who dies in the beginning, Ronan O'Connor. And so you play as his ghost, and you're trying to solve your own murder, like who killed you. And so it was going to play a little bit more LA noir style, but Square was like, no, we want it to be different. And like, I'm going to tell you, like what we got was still really good and very different than what you would expect it to be coming out of Square, I think, or most companies. But they basically told them to scrap like 90% of what they'd finished, redo it in the way that Square wanted it to be done, and have it release ready within like 6 months. So
that just begs the question, why even buy it?
Right. So then this company had to, like, the game got pretty poor reviews coming out because it was glitchy, it felt unfinished, because it was. Like, they didn't have the time to meet every demand that Square had, to, you know, get where they wanted it to be. And then when it was released, it got review bombed. They didn't make like hardly any money at all from it. And then Square dropped them, and they had to file bankruptcy.
That's so rough, man.
It was so shitty. And so like, I don't know, now I bought the game because it was on sale, and I'm like, I wish I could give my money directly to these guys rather than knowing it went to Square, because in this instance, like, I mean, the company's dissolved now. Like, they're not working together anymore. I think some of them might have gotten jobs in other companies, but like, they wanted their own company.
Yeah.
You know? So that was pretty shitty of Square.
It was.
But anyway.
Well, any final words from anybody?
Alan Wake 2 and Parasite Eve Remake.
The end.
That's all I got.
All right.
If you have the chance, re-experience Total Overdose, can pay attention to the audio. That's something that a lot of people don't notice.
Yeah, that's definitely something to look at. Like, it's amazing the detail you'll find in a lot of games. Just got to be willing to look. All right, well, that was fun, guys. We will reconvene at some point and just figure out what we'll talk about on the screen next.
Right on.
Alrighty. Take care, guys, and we will see you next time. Or hear you next time.
Bye!
Bye. Bye, everybody.